I'm out in Corunna today, and I like getting out to Corunna. It's a nice little town. And this gentleman here, we've been friends on Facebook for some time, and then we just realized how we knew each other 100 years ago. But Donald Daye, thank you so much for giving me your time here today.
Thanks for coming out.
You got a nice place out here. You got lots of. I love the big open window concept and everything. And you've been out here a while.
So we've been here. This May will be 28 years, and I actually just grew up down the road from here. And when we bought this place, I always tell people I never intended to like live down the street from, where I grew up, let alone my parents still there, right?
Right.
But it was just a thing. We originally lived in Tree Streets on Walnut Street, just off Kathleen.
Yep.
And we're looking, not that we didn't get my son until like we came here, but I like it. It's a corner lot. It's got a nice big, pool.
Yeah.
I like because the pool's like separated. There's a fence there.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's been home now for almost 28 years.
Oh wow,
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, the kid growing up, I was out for my walk there, pounding the pavement there, because of my mom's history with heart stuff. My doctor made me start going way back in when I was in my 40s to go and get a halt monitor, go and get a stress test, get checked out, right?
Yeah.
Because you never know. And so now it was my turn to go and do it again, and I was out there pounding the pavement this morning thinking about, my childhood, like growing up here, walking around this neighborhood, right?
Did you have a lot of fun?
Oh yeah. This was a great place. I mean, Corunna like stopped at basically Cameron Street, right? When I was growing up, all that stuff out there, where the beer store and the subdivision all started, Paddock Green and all that. That was all field.
Right.
Right. I mean, Is
that where you played? Was out in the big field? Did you
so a lot down there was. That's another story we'll get to about the hockey and the silver stick, right? Because we were a lacrosse family, but every winter there was big ponds down here in Beckwith.
Oh yeah.
Right, where DuPont, they call it Nova St. Clair now, and we would get out there and play all day, right?
Yeah.
And then summertime it'd be down at Ferry Dock Hill.
Right.
In the river, right?
Yeah.
Catching rides. I was just down at one of my friends has a nice little cottage down on the river there. And I was like, Jamie, did you ever because I knew some of the guys that drive the boat, right? They grew up with me, so that was their summertime job. So we would be in that little where they put the boat in and they would leave the rope out for us.
Oh.
So we could get across and get to the island. And then they would just bring us back for free, right? Because obviously it's pretty hard to get back to Ferry Dock Hill with the current, right? But yeah, it was a wonderful place to grow up as a young fellow, right?
What did your parents do?
So my mom came from a farm out of Wallaceburg, and my dad came from actually originally born in Chipman, New Brunswick.
Okay.
And then his family moved up here, and he grew up on Essex Street, right by the old hospital there.
Yep.
Essex and Mackenzie Street.
I do. I know where it is.
And so my father worked for many years with Polysar, and my mother, once all of us, because there was 5 boys and 1 girl, once we all grew up, able to look after ourselves. She started working at the old Mrs. Devereaux had a grocery store downtown. She worked at that. She worked at the post office part-time, and then that's where she retired at us. So yeah, she was a farm girl. My father was quite a athlete too growing up. Yeah. He had some
like hockey or
lacrosse, basketball with skits, right?
Oh yeah.
He went to skits, right? Yeah, being in that neighborhood, right? And he played on a couple of they were called the Beavers then.
Oh yeah.
Sarnia Beavers. They actually played on a couple of Canadian championships, and like it was telling you there in the little synopsis about my dad, in 1963, he was the first one to bring Corunna Pee Wee OBA championship.
Yeah.
And then 8 years later, with the two oldest brothers, he brought a...
That was the lacrosse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought a lacrosse championship
Yeah.
to Sarnia. It was their first, right? And
when did they? Do you remember? I don't know. They became the Pacers, right? Or that's Point Edward. Was this
that
different?
was the junior, right?
Yeah.
That was the junior. But my father, when he played with... Yeah, they were... when my older brothers got out of juvenile and they were playing, I think they were called the Easy Movers.
Okay.
And then I believe they came the Pacers, right?
Right.
Because both my brother Doug and Russ both played junior, and then one left and went to Allsburg because it was, I don't know, a conflict with one of the coaches, and then my brother ended up joining him down there anyways, right? And then my one brother ended up playing senior A with the Warlocks in Windsor, which had a really...
Did you play?
Yeah, so both myself and my twin brother, we played. All the five boys played, and I don't know how my parents did it. It was, it was, luckily the two oldest were going somewhere with my father, and then the middle one was going somewhere with my mother, and then Ronnie and I were going with all my, there was wonderful people. Mr. Waters, he was a detective here in Sarnia Police.
Right.
Dragged us all over. So thanks to, all those families, right, to get there. So we played all the way up together. And lacrosse was really vibrant then, right, because there was no soccer. There was just baseball and thing. There was a lot less to do, right? So there was, you could play travel and house league. Right? That's how big it is. Now it's just travel, right? But played right up until junior, tried out the first year when I became junior. I got cut, last cut, and then the next year, I made the team, and I was in an industrial accident down in Union Carbide working contract in the warehouse, and I was out for the whole season.
Oh, well, my dad used to work at Union Carbide.
Yeah, so it was... That kind of was not nice because that was the first year they won the Founders Cup. They won it back-to-back that year, right? But, it is what it is, right?
Life happens.
Life happens, right?
Yeah.
Those industrial accidents.
Yeah, so you had a good time doing that, and what was you must have created some great memories playing the game.
Oh, yeah. I still see some of the fellows that I played with, right? He sits down, we're in section 115 right by the, and he sits just down for us, one of the guys I played all the way up through,
Oh, at the Sting?
Yes, at the Sting games, right? And so we talk, and I can tell when I go out and watch my nephews, young guy playing AAA, and now it's hit hockey. That young fella plays lacrosse in the thing. Those are the kids that aren't afraid to go in the corners.
Yeah,
right. And they know how to take a hit. And they know how to give it out, right, without because.
Well, lacrosse is a rough sport. I mean, I used to live stream the Pacers for a few years, and I remember thinking, wow, there's not a lot of rules. I mean, there is, but, but I mean, as far as hitting goes, it's like you can,
Yeah, but, when I played it, and that's what I say, everybody look, and you climbed uphill all the way to school. Yeah. No, what I'm saying was the game has changed totally.
Sure it has.
Right? Because when I was growing up playing it, you were allowed to go down behind me, and I went for the ball. You could just cross-check me into the boards, pick the ball up and go.
Yeah.
Now they blow the whistle, it's control, it goes over to me, and away you go up the other way. It's actually, I took my wife to the first professional lacrosse game at Old Cobo, the Detroit Turbos.
Oh, yeah.
And she'd never seen live lacrosse before, right? Because we're past. I didn't meet her until long after.
What's her name?
Right? Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were sitting a couple rows off the floor, and they draw the ball back like that, and the guy goes, picks it up, and right over top the head you could hear this crack, as plain as you and I talking here. And she's going, "Are they allowed to do that?" And I said, "Apparently so."
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like, and if I don't know if you've ever been to like a rock game, but that should be on your list, because once you see it live, you'll go, "Yeah, he was right. It's the fastest game on 2 feet."
Yep.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of weird to see them now, the way they play, much like a lot of the sports, defense, offense, right? So they have a offensive group. They go down, if they can't score, off they get, on comes the defense. My father and Jack Sonneville were implementing that in 1971.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
It is a fast game. There's no doubt. And I remember when I was first learning about it, I was like, "There's no offsides, really.
No.
It doesn't really
No.
exist."
Yeah.
They can, but it's
Yes.
pretty rare that they call that. And try commentating it. I commentated it too, and it's like the ball's down here, and it's like, okay, it's back over there.
Yeah.
Number 11's got the ball.
Yeah.
So it definitely it was. Shift over to hockey now. You mentioned the Sarnia Sting. I know you're there you're a season ticket holder. Right?
Yep. Yeah.
How long have you been a ticket holder?
Okay, so a ticket holder for three years now.
Yeah.
Not long after I retired. No, I guess. Anyways, I was going to 12 games a year, right?
Sure.
And a lot when I was still working, because our CN had 4 seats in the north end, so people weren't going, and so I would take the tickets, right? But I'm a original London Knight fan. I know everybody goes, right? But
my co-host,
but I don't
like you.
No, but no. So it's funny when London comes to town, and Mark stands like we're right at the top there, right?
Oh yeah.
And Mark's always standing hovering around. I'm like, you can't stand here, but no. When we didn't have junior hockey, my friends and I just like going to watch the Squires.
Right. Yeah.
When they were in their heyday, winning the Allen Cups, we would get in the car and drive down the old 22 and go to the old ice gardens, right? And spend a Friday night watching there, and then come home.
Yeah.
And we do that probably 6 or 7 times a season, right? Just something to do, but I'm not a Knight fan now. I'm actually a Sting fan. I really like the youth and where we're going now, right?
Yeah. They're doing okay this year.
Yeah.
They've come through some big struggles, but they're pushing forward. They keep going, and I think they got a great coaching staff going on too.
I do too. Now, the other fellow that just came in here that replaced Haley there, I was just talking with somebody saying that he's got the defense, the defensive side of the game, right?
Yeah.
That was his expertise,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. And he's been, part of, gold medal games and stuff like that. So Canada games.
Last year was it was a struggle for us, but we all knew we were going to do that when we mortgaged the future.
That's right.
Right? And that's what happens, right? It's a circle, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago they really went for it, right? And you take that chance.
Yes, I mean,
It didn't quite work out, but
look what we gave up, right? Look what we gave up, Porter's,
I know
the captain and thing. But look, you can't.
But you can't predict that either, right? I mean, you try to.
No.
Try to.
Yes.
The OHL is bittersweet too, because it's kind of like the toughest league there is, but then you work with some kids and then they get called up and they stay.
Yes.
And now you lose them and you're like, now I gotta, you kind of gotta have a plan B prepared.
No, I think. We're going to make the playoffs. And,
I think so.
If we were to end now, we'd take on Windsor, and I would rather play Windsor than play London. Not not because, just I think we could get more games, right? Like,
Yeah,
London's going to
yeah.
be tough, right?
Yeah.
But look,
London's
Windsor
always
just come
tough,
back
right?
and beat them the other night after
I
us,
know.
right?
I know.
They were up 3. They were up 3-0. They come back and beat them. And look what we had Windsor 2 weeks ago. We had them 2-0, like we did Kingston.
Yeah.
On the thing. But people go, oh, geez, here it is again.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, it's going to happen.
I don't
And
like
look,
overtime.
From being
either.
yes,
Here we go.
yes. Look at how many shootouts
Yeah.
we've been in this
Yeah.
year.
It's been crazy.
I think
It's got to
we
be
lead
a
them.
record close.
But I'm from being an official, and we'll get to that
Yeah.
too. I don't like to be critical, but on Sunday there, I can honestly say we got the short end of the stick, like we
Yeah.
did up in Guelph.
Yeah.
And even though we came out of that, because I never ever liked, even when my son was playing, right?
Yeah.
I never ever made it about the official. I didn't want somebody yelling at me, saying,
Yeah,
that,
hey, you don't. Well, I've said it on other shows. There's a reason why referees don't come out and give interviews, right?
Absolutely.
And they've got to have
Look,
rhino skin for sure, right?
Yeah, look, they're human, right?
that's
I
right.
mean, it's some of them.
I mean, there's an expectation. For
I'm
sure,
sure
but
some of them, that's not their full-time job.
Probably not.
Right?
Yeah.
This is a good side gig for them,
Probably,
right?
yeah.
To go around southwestern Ontario,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And
So
do
when-
it.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're human, right?
Yeah,
They have a job they got to go back to.
Yeah.
And like listen to
Family,
other
all
people
that.
complain about, oh, you
screwed
snowed us.
us.
You snowed us, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, and I don't. But
So when did you get into officiating?
okay. So from being a lacrosse person, I never ever played any minor hockey myself. Partly because, 5 brothers, right, playing lacrosse in the summertime, and parents just couldn't afford 5 kids going, to Moretown to play
Yeah, I
play
can
hockey.
imagine.
So it was one or the other, right?
Right.
Played a little bit of baseball too, but I was always out on the rink and going for a shinny somewhere, right, wherever, right, and I ended up, starting to play in men's league Sunday night. It was one of the last slap shot leagues Sunday night with Imperial Oil and our team, and there's Tip Top, a bunch of junior A players played in there, and then River League was the only other place that still had slap shot involved. So I played a bunch of that, and then when I got into CN, they found out I could play hockey, and there was only myself and another fella. We're the only 2, and the rest of them were like in Doug Morgan's transportation, like riding the train.
Yep,
right?
yep.
So that's the only minor hockey. So then got playing. My wife and I, we ended up getting married after living together for almost 10 years in 1992. And it was just when you don't have kids and you're working shift work and she's working days and you're gone all day instead of coming home, she's like, that's it. And then I remember one day my twin brother had been into it for a few years, and he said to me, Don, he's like, I think you should become an official. And I go, geez, I don't know about that, right? So anyways, I had to go to Lambeth and take my level 2. I think that was in, I want to say 93, 94.
Oh, okay.
And I ended up getting up to level 3, which is like where you get the bands, right? And you can work in a 3-man. Well, now it's basically a 4-man, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually, that's what one of my friends was saying to me the other night at the wrap-up. He's like, and he's my age, 65, turning 60. He says, Don, I'm getting back into refereeing. You should think about it. And I'm going, no. And he's going, you don't have to skate. You only have to go like from the net out to center ice and back.
Yeah.
And I go, what, are you just going to do juvenile, like the 4-man system? You're not going to, because here's the pleasure I got out of officiating was I got more giving to the little ones, the novice and Adam, right,
Right.
than I did the peewee, the bantam, the midget, or the juvenile. And the reason was because they're more appreciated
Oh yeah.
of you coming here and doing something you don't
Yeah.
have to come here and do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas those older kids, right, they start to learn the vulgarity,
Yeah.
right? And anyway, so I stayed in that officiating for, God, I think it was like almost 12 years, 10, 11, 12 years. Anyways, and then
You obviously really enjoyed it then.
I did, right? Because it was close here, right? Moortown to go down in there because you only basically went into Sarnia or Petrolia in the playoffs because you couldn't go and do your own center, right? You could do the
Right.
first round, and then they didn't want the same people in there
Yeah,
that have done them all year. So we would have to go to Petrolia or go to Sarnia. So I worked a lot with my twin brother because he'd have been in. And Ron was a real good official, no doubt about it. We were actually, I was just telling this story at his oldest guy's father-in-law that just passed away there. We were at the memorial and the thing, and I was like, Hugh was a wonderful official. And he was in charge of the OHA guys, so the junior C and all that around this area. And he saw Ronnie and I when we were young, and he like come to us. He's like, "Hey, you guys ought to think of coming out of the OMHA and coming to the OHA." And I looked at Hugh and I go, "Hugh, that's flattering." I says, "But I was like, I just can't justify leaving for 5 hours, going to Dresden or Blenheim, rolling around on the ice as a linesman with 18 to 21-year-olds, when I can drive 5 minutes down the road and make that in 2 games and be back home."
Yeah.
And he just looked at me. He's like, "Fair enough, right?" But
Well, it was nice that they asked, and
yeah, and he wasn't the last guy. The next guy that came in and took his job, he was trying to do it again, right?
they were
More
ganging
for
up on you, eh?
yeah, more for like Ronnie, because Ronnie was more. I think that has something to do with him in the music industry and playing drums and singing and all that. I was more of I liked doing the lines. I really didn't like, the guy that had the bands, even though I did it.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed doing the lines.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it hard for you to watch a hockey game?
No.
Because you're going, why didn't they call that?
Well, what's
Or do you get into
frustrating
that?
sometimes, and I see it, right? Like especially for our players. I'm not saying nothing against the other players, but when the linesman comes in, and they're both sitting there, and just drop the puck. Like Beamish got kicked out 2 or 3 times. He's one of our better face-off guys, right? There's a reason why he's out there, right?
Yep.
When it's critical and all that. And so sometimes that is hard to watch, right?
Yeah.
Like even I can
Why
hear,
do they take so long? Are you ready, set, go?
yeah, well, it's an infringement over here,
I
right?
get it,
And
I get it.
and then you got the back lines guy, he's taking his job a little bit too. When they're in, because we had that too, right? We were told to call all that stuff too. Kick them out, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes guys would come in and put their sticks down and say something goofy to you. So you just look at them and just say out.
Yeah.
And what do you mean out? And it's like out.
Yeah.
It's like, what for?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have to out, right? So
don't call me that.
that part is kind of frustrating, right? But
Yeah.
it's not.
Especially when it's like coming from a young fella to a older fella.
Yes.
And it's like you're talking to your. You should be showing me some more respect.
Speaking of Beamers, my wife's doctor is Dr. Leonard. So Dr. Leonard's a young doctor that does 1 game a month there for the Sting.
Oh, okay.
And he was speaking about young Beamish, and he said, all the kids I've talked to on that team, he's the most utter respect young man that he's ever, like a 17-year-old that he's ever crossed.
I've heard that
right?
too.
Yes. So
That's nice to hear.
yeah. So it's not. I'd like to go and Yeah, I'm a Sting fan, but I appreciate the talent on the other
Sure.
team,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's get.
I think we all do to some
Yes,
point. For
yes,
sure,
and
right?
it was I huddled with my best friend and his wife. That's how I met Kim, was through one of my best friend's wife years ago, and we huddle and talk before the game, and if we can just play like we did the night before,
Right.
because that Saturday night game was probably the best game I've seen them play all year.
Yeah.
They were just all over it. Passes were good.
Yep.
They defended well. They blocked well. They did everything probably Letang wanted them to see play, right? Yeah, back to that official thing there on the weekend there, that one where what's his name got crunched into the boards over, and they put a 5 up, and then it cleared and went to like a 2. A 2, and then Wainwright come in and retaliated, so they both got 2.
Yeah.
I don't know, what did you see there, like right below you?
Are you asking like why was the 5 up and then gone?
I know why the 5 was up. That's
Right.
why they put.
They have to
review,
put it up.
right?
Yeah.
But then it goes. But what I would say was,
So there was another penalty and it canceled each other out.
right. They went to
my
a 2.
understanding.
But the way I look at it, and I shouldn't be saying this either, because if that was us, the 5 would go up and you'd be showing the gate.
Yeah. The 5 went up because it was a review.
Yeah.
And then once they make a decision,
But then
they
my
take it
friend
down.
Ray said,
rather than put 2
Yes.
minutes up and then say no, it's a 5.
right.
Because the fans wouldn't like that.
No. Yeah. My friend Ray said, well, Don, look at the replay. He goes, he kind of was bent over, like already crunched, like trying to get the puck. And I was like, yeah, but he still got cross-checked from behind.
But he
So they
was
called it
bending
cross.
over.
cross-checking, right?
Yeah, see, we'll be talking about that one for a while.
Yeah, because I was telling another fellow,
That's one of those calls.
back in the day, my supervisor would be looking at me, no, that's a 2 and a 10 and a gate. Right?
Yeah.
If, ands, or buts. Right?
Yeah.
When checking from behind first come out, they wanted you to call it. Even on the little guys, right?
Yeah.
Because, they had hitting it at them, right? As long as you were thing. Now you can't hit until you're peewee.
And then the moving forward with the officiating, you
Yeah.
had something to do with the U21, was it?
Yeah, so with my son playing minor hockey out of Moortown, and I had my neighbor growing up next door, Mr. Helps, was in charge of, so they have marshals, and then they have another fella in there in that office right by the skate sharpening.
Okay.
It's a dressing room there right in the corner in the big rink. And so one to be in charge of the marshals, one to be in charge of the scorekeepers, and then it was paper.
Yeah.
Now it's game sheet, right,
Yeah.
off the iPad. And so a good friend of mine was taking the directors over and just asked me, he said, hey, would you happen to look after the runners? So that's the little guys that get attached to a team, and they carry water bottles, and it's quite an experience for a young fella. Now these days, I just found out one young little guy got a jersey from Sterling Blues team.
Oh, yeah.
And he got $250 in cash by the time the weekend was done.
Wow.
You're talking like a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so it's an experience. So I looked after that for a couple of years. So they saw me around the office, and I was always at the rink when Bryson was practicing. And my neighbor growing up, Mr. Help, said to me, he's like, hey, Don, you're like shift. He's like, why don't you come in and work for me? Wearing these green jackets, they called, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay, what do we do here, right? So you basically, it's a good way to watch, juvenile hockey,
Right.
If you like hockey. And you change the signs of who's playing, right, on the home and the thing. The magnets on the doors, so they know where to go.
Right.
Even though up there in the lobby it tells them go to dressing room number 2.
Yeah, but where's
right?
that?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's number 2?
And pay the officials, right, whenever off both rings and all that. So I got
There's
into
a way to
that.
keep your feet into it too.
Yeah. And so I got into that, and then it was about 8 or 9 years ago, Ross retired, and they wanted me to take his job over. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I can do that, right? So I worked alongside this other fella. Butch had been there for, 30, 35 years, right?
Wow.
I mean, that tournament is 52 years. It was because we had 52 years ago. It was a big celebration. And I worked with Butch for a couple of years, and then the poor old fella, we went in COVID, so we didn't have it. And then we came out of COVID, he didn't make it. He ended up passing away, and then they looked at me and said, "No, you can just run both."
Oh, there you go.
Right? So we're talking like,
Well,
like
that shows a sign of faith, though, and obviously you did a good job.
Yeah, I think so, right? Everybody thinks that, it's just Silver Stick, right? And it's a tournament, and you just started working on it. No, we start working in August,
That's
right? For January.
No, there's a lot going on.
Right?
Yeah.
Like monthly meetings, right?
Yeah,
And
I did some announcing at Sarnia there a few years ago. It was pre-COVID, I'm pretty sure. And I remember looking around and going, and knowing a few people involved, and I was like, yeah, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
To keep it organized.
So that
teams.
job, it's not so much finding the marshal people, because I integrated, because it was a lot of older guys,
Right.
That worked in the plants and all that. I saw all the older guys when I was young coming into this, and then they're done now. So it was like, time to get some youth in it. So I would get my my son, who's going to be 27 this month. He's into it. My nephew's daughter, Kata, she's 18. She comes and helps out, and but it's the every 2 years you're dealing with a new executive at Moortown, because they turn around, so you're dealing with a different coordinator.
Right. They're only allowed to be on so long. Is that what it is?
Yeah, for 2 years, right? And then they could come back, right? If they get voted in or whatever, if 2 people running for that job, whatever. And so for that, my end of that job was, I had a list of, they had a list of 50 or 60 I seen, but we were looking, me and Butch going through, and that guy's not here anymore, right? Like, not on this earth, right? Or we'd say, no, he's a scorekeeper, not a paper sheet guy. And then I ended up with a list of like 10, 15 people left. So my job is, 1st December is, once they get a schedule out, even though it's not up on the website, is to call my favorite 10 people and say, here's a schedule, what games do you want? And I blot it all in, and then we give that to Moortown Minor Hockey, because there's parents that have to get at least 8 hours of volunteering, or the minor hockey system will cash their $500 check, right?
Gotcha.
So that's part of their way of getting the parents involved, right?
Yeah. Well, and they should, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Support the kids.
Yeah.
Make it all work.
Yeah. So the first few times of doing that, it was pretty, because I was just saying, this year was a little struggle, even though the girl I worked with, she was wonderful. Everybody's got their own stuff going on, right?
Sure.
And
everybody's got a different way of doing things, putting it together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One of the girls I worked with was a real estate agent, so she was a prompt, right, to respond real quick. But it worked out really good, and if I could tell you how many times a day from the time, so what happens is, when I give them the list of all my people and they slot them in the slots, because you have like a thing of timekeeper and game sheet for all the games on both rinks, right? And so they'd fill them all in, and then they create a sign-up, electronic sign-up, that goes out to the Moortown parents, and the parents go on and just pick their games, right? And start filling in themselves. So there's no more like my neighbor down the road used to call, right? And say, hey, Dave, what's your game? What games you want? Hey, Don, blah, blah, blah. And then to get out of that, you would have to pick up a phone to call the guy back. Now it's pretty easy. You could just go, hey, Dave, do you want to go snowmobiling on the weekend? I got Silver Stick. Never mind, I'll get out of it.
Yeah.
Push of a button.
Yeah.
Right? And then it sends electronic to the coordinator.
Yeah.
So from the time that went up, 2 weeks left, and we had almost 60 slots to fill, which doesn't seem like a lot.
No, that sounds like a lot to
but,
me.
But it
wouldn't know where to
is,
start.
right?
Yeah.
Because without those people in the box, the game doesn't go on, much
Yeah.
like an official on the ice, right?
Lots
So,
of work to make that happen.
Yeah, so it all worked out, and like people were still dropping out on the weekend.
Right.
But it's just what it is. So that was my 20th year in that office. Previous to that, 10 or 11 on the ice as an official, right?
Well, you must
So-
have been doing something right there to keep going with that.
Yeah, so I told them last year, right, when I was like, I lost Butch. I'm down to one person. This is, I think I've had enough,
Yeah.
right? That being enough of saying, I'm going to come back and volunteer. I just don't want to be running this
Yeah.
anymore.
I've
It's
had
time
enough.
for
That's
somebody
okay.
else, right?
Well, it's okay to do
And
that.
I
right?
remember,
Move on to other things and take
I
a
don't
break.
know if you know, Mark Colburn. He was in
Yeah,
charge
yeah.
of Mark. So Mark was in charge. I think he comes out in the lobby and catches me before I'm leaving on a year ago on the Sunday, and he's like, Donnie, please come back. Please come back. And I said, one more year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was
Okay,
sitting
one
here.
more.
I was sitting here in December, watching that sign up, right? And then it would get filled, and then people would drop out, and I'd be calling my director, and we, it was just, and at the time I was like regretting it, and up until last Wednesday when we had our wrap-up dinner at Stokes, it was still like they were still like trying to get me, not for the timekeeping and that, because they need somebody not with knowledge, but will still look after the Green Jackets, because the part of it is, even though it's on an electronic game sheet, there's a binder. So every team that comes has a roster.
Oh, okay.
And it's on a piece of paper. And it was just like on the paper, right? You'd have to say
Yep.
David Burrows, Donald
Yep.
Daye. And you have to say, is he on that list?
Yeah.
If he
You'd never
isn't,
see me on
then
that
you'd
list,
have,
I can
no,
tell
but
you.
I meant, yeah, right.
I know what you
But so you'd have to go and, you'd have to be diligent about this, because
Sure.
every Friday or Saturday, somebody from the OMHA comes in and say, I want to see these certain games.
I want to
And
shift
they-
gear. I
yeah.
got to shift gears
Yeah.
here a little bit
Yep.
and talk about something that I know is important for you to share,
Sure.
and a bit of a tragedy that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about Trevor.
Trev was a vibrant young 21-year-old when he left us.
And just so people know, I know, but who was Trevor to you?
Oh, Trevor was my nephew. He
Yeah.
was my the brother right above us, son, and he was working at Suncor, and left us in an industrial accident. And
And how long ago was that?
that was 2003,
Yeah.
the day of the blackout.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, very sad day. Yeah, so, and I was saying to somebody the other day, I have to be kind of careful when I talk about, the accident and Trevor and all that, right? Because out of respect for my older brother,
Sure.
Kevin and his wife and the family, right? But what comes from tragedy, right, was the golf tournament that we were sitting around one day months after, and it was something to do with, how can we memorialize Trevor, right? Even though, excuse me, it was kind of sad, he's not here anymore. So I said to Sean, well, we can, some way, like do golf tournament, or get Uncle Ron, my twin brother, in his band, and get all these other bands that he knows.
Yeah.
There's something that we can do.
So the community came together and
Yeah.
doing
So
that.
I got the blessing from his father, my nephew Kevin, and thing, and we moved forward with Trev's tournament, and we worked alongside with the charity. The money that we drove off the tournament went to Our Youth at Work, who was another fella that lost his son in an industrial accident too. So went for 15 years, did those flags. The final year.
Yeah, we're going to show that. Maybe just describe the one on the left, and there's the yellow one on the right there.
Yeah, so the one on the left was the one that we hung on the flags the very last day of the tournament, and the other one is a picture of like the sun going down on the tournament, and there was actually, I forget the fellow's name, from the Sarnia Journal that interviewed Kevin and Diane and the whole family, right? Wrote an article about saying, the sun going down on it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we still could have went on with it, but like I'm sure it was a painful reminder, right?
Sure.
Of
You did it for how many years?
15.
15, yeah.
15. Yeah,
So,
and those
long.
little
That's a long time. I mean, there's a lot of golf tournaments, a lot of memorial tournaments and stuff, and then a lot of them don't last that long.
Look how long that cancer one's been going on, right?
Yeah.
I played in that quite a few years at Greenwood, right?
Yeah.
But, and there's another, right? It's just not, like, we just go down and thing. It was 144 people.
Wow.
2 on every tee.
Yeah.
Right? 8 o'clock in the morning.
I wouldn't have a clue where to start with
the very first year we did it by tee times. Now, mind you, it wasn't 144, it was probably 110 or something like that. But still, and it became a long day, and said, look, we had to go to the golf course and say, look, we need, so we always did it Father's Day weekend.
Right, okay.
On the Saturday, right? And that was our day to do it. And
I know you talked, there's a lot about, creating the awareness for safety. I know you mentioned the youth program, but then it kind of turned into like, was the gentleman you mentioned that
Rob Ellis from My Safe Workplace. It was Our Youth at Work, but he's wonderful man, wonderful story. Like I said, he's coming up here, I think next month, out at the college. He's still trooping around North America, right? To all the big businesses, schools, colleges, wherever he can get that message across, right? And the last I seen him, he would come down. He wasn't there on our closing. Something was going on, but he has his Team Canada jersey, and it's full with signatures, like of all these places, people, right, that he's seen and all that. And so I think at the end of the 15 years, it was somewhere around in between like 250,000 or something like that.
Great.
Right? And I said,
Are you a good golfer?
Okay. I played lots when I was years ago, right?
Me too.
When we didn't have no kids, I was always playing. Like I was a member at the old, when Polysar owned here in Oaks.
Yeah.
I was out at Indian Hills for 5-6 years, right? I was down here at Moortown, right? I've worked as a marshal down there, but I haven't played a lot in the last because, it's, once the summertime comes, it's hard to leave this.
Why would you? You got your own little resort there.
Yeah. So we do get out. My wife plays too, right?
Yeah.
She enjoys the game too. But any chance somebody calls me and asks me to go on a scramble or something like that, if I'm not busy, I'll go and
I'd
play.
have to get a brush out and get all the dust off of it. It's been my left-handed clubs have been sitting up in the garage for a while.
Yeah.
I'd probably hurt myself.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so just kind of connecting the Trevor's accident was in 2003, and then 2014, my cousin's boy, I forget, I don't want to say how old, he was in his 20s, he was killed out in Alberta, electrician was electrocuted. And then that same summer, my twin brother Ron was in the industrial accident where the boiler blew out here at Shell. And I always tell this story. My dad's brother was still alive at the time. My Uncle John said, you know, when Ronnie survived that accident, he goes, the Daye curse is gone. He lived, right?
Right.
It was his, how can you say, kind of dry humor from out east, right?
Yeah.
And he was telling my older brother Doug, right? And even one of his sons, like John, he's like, the Daye curse is gone.
Yeah.
Because he almost thought we had a curse, right? From Trevor to his grandson, right?
Yeah.
Out west.
Yeah.
And then like to Ronald's accident, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, and there lies the whole thing. And I used to be guilty of this too, Dave. I used to think I'd get my car and I drive to work and I get my car and I drive home. And that's not always the case, right?
Yep.
You could get in an accident on the way there, right? You could get killed in the yard
Yeah,
or
anything could
whatever
happen.
if you're not, right? If you're not being... So that brought a lot more awareness to me of what happened, especially when Trevor died, because I was still in the yard quite a bit. So I was out walking around in the yard checking cars, and like it wasn't just being in the office, right?
Right. Well, and seeing, it's like,
Yes, seeing...
don't want to argue with a train. Right?
No. And I remember when I was, because I hired there in 84, and I was up in the yard office, and one of our jobs was they give you a list and say, like, we'll drop you off at the end and check the track on the way back, and you'd have to verify the numbers for the train that was leaving the yard. Well, these guys were switching at the Plank Road, and I remember, you know, like they always taught you, like you look that way and you look that way, and then you cross the two tracks, right? And I remember crossing this one track, and I just got into the halfway part of the second one, looked both ways, and right behind me, like not 20, 30 feet, one of those empty frame flat cars come in and just rocked in and like made me jump off the top, right? I bet. And I was standing there looking back because you couldn't see, right? Because of the lighting way down by Plank Road there, right? And Indian Road, and I'm going, for God's sakes, right? Like,
is that what you said?
Yeah, well, maybe not for God's sake, for God's sake, but you know, it just made me more aware, right?
Anything can go wrong.
More appreciative of,
I know you try to think like, oh, we'll look both ways. Like I can see there's nothing coming as I'm walking, but no, just to stop for a moment,
right?
You never know.
Yeah. No, CN, you know what? CN was a good job. I made it to the Rainbow. We went, when I first started, I got hired at the Roundhouse at the end of Scott Road, which is down Lambton Diesel.
Yep.
And so I always tease, you know, some of the guys that I played hockey and ended up driving trains. I was like, I was driving trains before you. You were switching cars.
Yeah.
Right? Even though, no, you worked in the office. That's where I ended up, right? In the office, I retired out of mechanical and a stores job. Finally got a day job after 31 years. Right. And then they're going, where are you going? Right? And I'm going, I'm 59 turning 60 and my pension's paid up and I'm getting out. Yeah. Because I had just lost my oldest brother to lung cancer, right? And he left, never had a pension, but he worked for 40 years for this fella at Sarney Piping Specialties, hard worker, forgoed his taking it at 60 to get more at 65 and never got it. And I went, you know what? I'm not looking ahead, but I am looking ahead. And I even get out for 1 year and something happens to me, at least I can say I was out. Yeah. Right? So it was a wonderful job. Tough sometimes, right? Sure. Working shift, seniority, stuck on midnights, Monday, Tuesday off.
Yeah, you do what you have to.
Yes, yeah, you do, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, most of the time when I was working, I mean, we didn't have our kids were dogs, right? Before
Yeah.
we adopted my son, so that was in 98, yeah, 1998. So I mean, we were both, you know, what did the people say? Oh, you're those dinks, right? Double income,
Double income, no
right?
kids. Yeah,
That's what people called you back
Yeah,
then,
that's
right?
my sister was like that.
And I'm like, no, we have dogs, right? Those are our kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have dogs, Jennifer and I, because
No.
it's just like I don't want the responsibility, and I don't want any more kids.
Yeah, but you did, right?
I had kids, yes.
Yes. So,
I hear you.
I mean, at the time, right? Like it was, you know, you could go and do what you want to do, right? That's part of the way, you know, where I played the rec hockey. You know, I was on the ice 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
You know, and still working shift work, going to work 5 days a week because it was 8-hour shifts. It wasn't 12-hour shift, right? So there wasn't much time off, but.
Well, Donald, I got to wrap things up. I feel like I know there's so much more we could keep talking about.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. We've reconnected. We say it was way back Marston Bowl days, I think.
Yes.
When I was doing karaoke. You brought it up. I was like, wow, that was. So I appreciate you sharing everything that you have, including Trevor and and everything else. And we'll have to get out for coffee or lunch or something and talk more about hockey.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Well, there you go. Donald Daye, and lots more we could talk about here, but we want to share this story around. That's why I do what I do here. So make sure you click the like and the love and click the share button so we can share Donald's story and everybody else. But as always, that's all the time I got for you this week. Have a great week and an even better weekend. We'll see you next time right here in the show. Go Sting, go.
Yeah, go Sting, go.